everyone. On behalf of ESB, it's my great pleasure to welcome you here this evening to join with us in celebrating the 90th anniversary of ESB, or as we like to think about it, the start of our countdown to our centenary in 2027 and beyond. I'd particularly like to welcome on Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, Leader of Fianna Fáil, Deputy Micheál Martin, Co-Leader of the Social Democrats, Deputy Catherine Murphy, and the Fianna Fáil spokesperson on Communications, Environment and Natural Resources, Deputy Timmy Dooley. A warm welcome also to the British Ambassador to Ireland, His Excellency Robin Barnett. To mark our 90th anniversary this year, we opened up a visitor centre at Ardnacrush Power Station in County Clare to tell the story of the Shannon scheme. This story is, of course, part and parcel of our national heritage. The Shannon scheme gave Ireland the first fully integrated electricity system in the world, and it also brought changes about in Irish society that were utterly transformative. And of course, it was the project that led to the foundation of ESB.
We're here tonight to celebrate the courage and vision of your predecessors in government, Taoiseach, and our predecessors in ESB. The construction of the Shannon scheme, both the hydro station and the extensive network to bring electricity to factories and homes, was a huge challenge and a huge achievement 90 years ago. It was an undertaking on a massive scale for any state, never mind for one so recently established. And we tonight, 90 years on, can only look back with admiration at the courage of the political and ESB leaders who brought it about. Of course, here in the gallery, I should mention Sean Keating. Keating was fascinated by Ardnacrush, and he has left us a wonderful artistic record of its construction. And these paintings, in Keating's own words, celebrated the transition of Ireland to a state of freedom and progress. And talking of our artistic heritage, I want to thank most sincerely the director, Sean Rainbird, for making the magnificent renovated gallery available to us. And I think, Sean, you can be every bit as proud tonight. This place is absolutely wonderful. It's an absolutely superb venue. Your predecessors in government, Taoiseach, approved the establishment of ESB to bring light and energy to the new state. And I know that today you're just as determined to meet the challenge of taking Ireland forward. The national planning framework already envisages an extra 1 million people here by 2040. And as part of national planning and national policy, I know that all of our stakeholders look to ESB to play a critical role in delivering energy targets for the country over coming years and decades. ESB's story begins with renewable energy of the Shannon scheme, and we are proud of that past. We're proud of our founders and of all the ESB staff who have built up the company. These past achievements inspire us today to meet the challenges of the future. And for that future, ESB's ambition is to lead the transition to reliable, affordable, low-carbon energy. Thank you.
Although the Shannon scheme is often presented as the project that transformed Ireland, the truth is that ESB has constantly evolved to meet the needs of society. Ardnacrusha is, as our chairman has said, our birthplace, and much of what we do today, and importantly, how we do it, derives from the original vision of the Shannon scheme for electricity as an enabler of societal well-being and economic progress. In the early days, the focus was on maintaining energy independence through indigenous fuels. After the Shannon scheme, ESB went on to build more hydroelectric schemes on the rivers Liffey, the Lee and the Erne. In the mid-1940s, we began the Rural Electrification Programme, which over the following 3 decades brought electricity to every home in Ireland, bringing about a major transformation in rural communities. From the 1950s, we worked very closely with Bord na Móna to generate electricity from peat as a way of maintaining fuel self-sufficiency and diversity while meeting a growing need for electricity. To cater for a period of rapid development, there was a major expansion into oil generation from the 60s, then gas following its discovery off the south coast, then coal in the mid-80s, and all this to meet the ever-growing demand and diversity of fuel sources. In the early 1980s, ESB built the first combined cycle gas turbine power plant in the world. Today, this technology forms the backbone of the modern power plant fleet throughout the world and will play an increasing role in the electricity system of the future to support more and more levels of renewable power. Following an economic downturn in the 1970s and a fall-off in major construction projects, ESB ventured into international consultancy in order to maintain our core expertise in engineering, which had been built up over the previous decades. This led to the creation of ESB International, which in the 40 years since its establishment has worked in 120 countries around the world. In the past decade and a half, we have completely rebuilt the original rural networks and modernised the electricity distribution system to support the needs of a modern economy and to enable the rapid increase in electricity generation from wind power. We now have one of the most advanced electricity networks in the world, supporting the second highest level of wind penetration in Europe. We've cut carbon emissions from our generation fleet by 1/3, and we've built the world's first national electricity vehicle charging infrastructure to support the electrification of transport. Along the way, we have transitioned from a wholly monopoly business to a portfolio of regulated and market-facing businesses, competing in what has become one of Europe's most liberalised energy markets. The fact is that ESB is an organisation that does not stand still. As a state-owned company with a commercial mandate and providing an essential public service, electricity is a public good. Our business is anchored in government policy. It is driven by the necessity to remain relevant, customer-focused and financially strong in an environment and a marketplace no longer the sole preserve of former national monopolies. ESB's first chief executive, Thomas McLaughlin, saw electricity as a way of unlocking Ireland's economic potential and giving Irish citizens the same opportunities that he saw elsewhere in the world. Looking back later in his life, he talked about having a passionate desire to do everything possible to build up the country from within. ESB's sense of purpose became embedded from this point, and it continues to shape our values and the way that we adopt and innovate to serve society. Today, our strategy is based on our continued belief in the power of electricity to be an agent for positive change in the transition to a low-carbon future. Over the next decade, we will completely renew our generation portfolio, replacing older fossil fuel plants with a mixture of renewables and high-efficiency gas turbines to cut the carbon intensity of our generation fleet by a further 50%. We will invest significantly in our electricity networks and new smart technologies to enable the widespread electrification of heating and transport, and to put the customer at the centre of a reimagined electricity system thereby giving them greater control over their energy use. By decarbonising electricity and electrifying heat and transport, we can look forward to a future where electricity will move from being 20% of Ireland's carbon problem to becoming 50% of the solution. Although we are looking at a future that is more uncertain than anything we've seen in the past, the values that have characterised ESB for generations are more important than ever as we take the next step towards our 100th anniversary and beyond. It is now my great pleasure and my privilege to welcome on Taoiseach Leo Varadkar, who has given his time to join us here this evening.
Six weeks before Michael Collins was assassinated, he set out a remarkable vision for the future of the country. And in a memorandum to Desmond Fitzgerald, father of Garrett, he explained his belief that we should look to the continent to see how hydropower could provide electricity to every home in the country. A progressive idea back in the 1920s. At the time it seemed ambitious, almost as unreal as John F. Kennedy predicting in 1961 that before the end of the decade an American would walk on the moon. But the courage of a small group of truly far-seeing people achieved the impossible. And reading back on the debates in the Dáil at the time, Patrick McGilligan, who's been mentioned earlier, articulated the vision as to how the state could play a leading role. And what could not be achieved by private enterprise alone could be achieved by state enterprise. He said there was a chance here at last of utilising one of the great natural resources of this country for the good of the people and the good of the country. And this was in the context of the creation of Ireland's first state-owned enterprise, our first semi-state, the Electricity Supply Board, the ESB. The government believed in what it was doing and invested £5 million, the equivalent now of about 40 billion euros. An extraordinary investment and a very brave decision by the founding fathers of this state. And as Taoiseach, I have to say I'm very proud to celebrate here tonight 90 years of achievement of the ESB. Innovation has been a defining feature of the work of ESB from the beginning, and it had to be because without innovation, ESB would never have succeeded as a company. Speaking back in 1961, the then Taoiseach Sean Lemass, I think, set out really eloquently the role of state-owned enterprises. And he said, even the most conservative among us understands why we can't rely on private enterprise alone. State enterprise in the fields of activity where private enterprise has failed or shown itself to be disinterested has not only been accepted, but is to be expected. When private enterprise fails, or lacks interest, or lacks ambition, well then state enterprises are required. So I think the success of this company, the success of ESB, gave people back in the 20s and 30s enormous confidence in this country's future and encouraged governments to attempt to achieve more. And in the 21st century, I know ESB continues to serve the people of Ireland. For example, a few weeks ago, the character of this company was very much revealed, especially your network staff across the country. And that was during Storm Ophelia, when your people worked so hard, such long hours, and so heroically, and despite the strain, maintained power across most parts of the country and restored it within a few days, about 7 to 8 days in the end. predicted that these high-intensity events will become more frequent as a result of climate change. Climate change is one of the great emerging challenges of our generation, and ESB has long played a leadership role in the delivery of cleaner energy for the Irish people. For instance, ESB has successfully removed oil, a comparatively dirty fuel, from your energy portfolio. And I know you're committed to leading the change to a low-carbon economy, and that tomorrow you're going to host a conference which will generate debate on that challenge and what it will entail. And I think this is another great example of a state enterprise offering leadership and new solutions. You've also developed a first-class national electric vehicle charging infrastructure. I know you're investing in solar power, and there are 19 wind farms that you're now investing in to reduce dependency on fossil fuels. The government ambition is to see 40% of our energy coming from renewable sources by 2020, and we're determined to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in line with EU targets and our long-term national transition objective, which aims to, first of all, meet our commitments made at Paris, and also to decarbonise our economy by the middle of the century, by 2050. So like you, all of you here tonight, the government believes in investing in the future. And what we want to do is to provide clarity, coherence and certainty in relation to planning for the future. And we want the capital plans of the semi-state to inform our work and to align with the development framework, facilitating sustainable and a long-term approach to meeting our future needs. And of course, over the next 20 years, renewable energy and smart grids will change our world in the way the internet and mobile phones did in the last 20. And we intend to be at the forefront of these changes, to be early adopters of these new technologies. So to conclude, the great success story that is the ESB is about so much more than just one company. It reminds us of all that can be achieved with ambition, of all that can be achieved if the state and public enterprise work together. And it's worth remembering tonight, of course, that the ESB contributes nearly €2 billion annually to the Irish economy through dividends, through investment, through taxation and through jobs. And 90 years ago, a group of dreamers believed that nothing was impossible for the new Irish state. And in dreaming those dreams, they made Ardna Crusha and ESB a reality. And I think in the 21st century, we have a new dream, a new ambition to revolutionise the economic and social life of this state. And your distinguished history is an example to follow and gives us confidence that we can succeed. So as this is a celebration, I just wanted to propose from here anyway, a toast to the ESB. To all who have served and to all who continue to serve the organisation and to the many benefits it delivers for the Irish people. Thank you very much.